Oh wow, hello there. Um, I've never actually done live before. This is my living room. Just promoting a book. Um, my name's Mary Sutherland. I'm a filmmaker. I have so far survived the lockdowns. This must be, I'm pretty sure this is the third attempt at a lockdown, isn't it, in the UK? And, I was thinking, what do I have to offer people if I start to do some lives? And I thought really just the benefit of my own personal experience in life. I came to filmmaking. I came to filmmaking late. I was actually 38 when I started doing filmmaking, believe it or not. So I had a life before then, and I did quite a few things before I started doing filmmaking. And you can see the films on Amazon Prime. There are multivarious different types of UK, inverted commas, low budget thrillers. We just completed a horror film, which is waiting for its slot in the Odeon cinema, so that's the good news. And we're getting our stripes as a distributor, hopefully, of that film and maybe other films as well. So I thought, well, with things like that going on, I really do have a responsibility to myself to keep going and encourage other people to branch out and do things that, for example, we haven't that often put films in cinema, and there seemed to be an opportunity, so we thought we would give it a try. So, any other news? Well, what I wanted to talk about was actually coping mechanisms for people in situations that have them in situations where they're not really had that experience before in life and how to cope with that. One of the things that I accidentally do seem to know about, and I'm not sure why, is because when I was a student, I accidentally got elected as a student leader at Stirling University in Scotland and got thrust into being the welfare officer and then the academic affairs officer and then the vice president of the student union, the Students' Association as it was called back then. And part of that job was to try to improve, obviously, the quality of life of students. So I had to do things like the academic appeals, which were obviously quite complex for students to explain why did somebody not perform as well as they should have if their circumstances had been better at the time. And as part of that, one of the things that I managed to achieve, and I actually don't really know how I did it, but I thought, I'd better come up with the answers because since then nobody else has achieved it. And I got nominated for Scots Woman of the Year in 1981 because apparently I helped to bring down the suicide rate of people and students at that university from what had been prior to my chance of helping out with it, 12 a year, if not more, which basically means, actually, I think in one year there was 36, so that's 2 a month. No, 3 a month, yeah. And at the time, it was 1 a month. And that wasn't a success for a community to have something like that happen. In my tenure for the 3 years that I did that job on and off in different guises, there were no suicides. So the principal of the university said, I don't know what it is you're doing, but we want to put you forward for an award for this because obviously things have changed since you've been working. Well, I thought about it, and it was a team of people, but one of my approaches was solve the problem. So in the byline, I've said some tips on problem solving. Obviously, in lockdown, it's very, very hard to work things out on your own. You know, how do you achieve it? And you know, obviously, with students who were in crisis, where they were feeling they couldn't cope, they were also feeling suicidal. So my approach was solve the problem, um, try and get the student to have an appeal, go through all the reasons and the problems, make a list of those problems and work through them. And it used to be multiple things. It would be losing their accommodation and accidentally being homeless because they couldn't pay rent, the grant didn't come through in time, um, or they couldn't get a grant, and or they couldn't also complete their work for various different social reasons. So I would sit down and go through it and solve methodically those things for that person. And often, if somebody is in crisis, that is what you need to do. You need to solve the problem. And once you've managed to achieve that, slowly over about 3 months, that person's state of mind will improve because they're working through a system of things to improve that. I think it's a bit silly of, you know, all these people that come up with these kind of strange systems of how to do it. But at the end of the day, if you solve the problem, the person's crisis will be eased and move away slowly. So you really do, if you apply it to yourself in lockdown, you have to sit and make the list and try and work through that list, and see if you can achieve those things. I was fairly lucky. Before the lockdowns happened, my New Year's resolution for 2020 was to stop smoking. And I had been a smoker for about 18 years, if not more, on and off, you know, with periods of not smoking. And what I found to be why it was successful was because I actually did the Russell Brand's 12-point program. It was going free at the beginning of the year. So I thought, well, I'll take this opportunity. And in my mind, I went, well, I really am addicted to nicotine. And I'll put it in the bracket of all the other things you can get addicted to, you know, which is like alcohol or, you know, other drugs. So, and that's nice tea. And so I thought, well, I'll take that approach with this and really take it seriously. And I realised that the programme that he was offering was extremely useful to people. It gives you a 12-point thing that you download, and you know, every day you try and go on to the next part of it. So you've got part 1 to 12, and you read the advice. I noticed by number 5 it was very interesting. You know, day 5, you're looking at realising that you can't do it on your own. That you know, you either need assistance from other people, but also that assistance from above. You know, that you really needed to call on a higher source, as he put it. Well, I mean, for me as a member of the Baha'i faith, that might have been easier than other people, but actually previously, from this system that he has, I hadn't given up, faith or no faith, but I decided to listen to what he had to say, and then you go through a series of, you know, making amends. I think it was by point 11 you had to make amends for all the things that your addiction had done to you and to other people. I mean, obviously for me, I realised that it wasn't just a health issue. It was the amount of money I was spending on it was colossal if you added it up over the number of years I was addicted to nicotine. I'm glad to say that 11 months later, is it? Yeah, nearly maybe 10 months later, I'm not a smoker anymore. Mm. And I do put that down to that system. That was offered by a thing called Commune, which is a sort of mindfulness stroke, all sorts of different support systems, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, you name it, teachers who do that. So I would recommend that for people to have a look at it. But that system won't necessarily solve someone's problem. So if they're in debt or in crisis, like they're going bankrupt or something, you really need, or debt, which is more complex, you need to sit down and work out what needs to be done to obviate that, to stop that from coming the worst case scenario. And so therefore, for your own mental health, what you would be doing is go to the expert or go to the person that can help you with that. Invariably in the UK, that would be Citizens Advice Bureau. And if they're not up for it, taking on the case, which sometimes happens, then you go to the next person who will. That could even mean going to your MP. And if you're homeless, obviously you want to get to the homeless authority, whoever it is that makes a decision, so that you can get a bed for the night somewhere. So these are the things that I was doing as a student welfare officer, and it seemed to succeed because it definitely for 3 years stopped the suicides. I believe after I left, it started again. So obviously, in my mind, I had a system and a way of working with people to prevent that from happening. Apart from solving the problem that they were having, you wanted to make a successful appeal, which obviously would go with all the other social problems that had caused the crisis in the first place. So any correct-minded academic would read that list and go, oh, yeah, you're not going to be able to pass that or study or do that while all these other things are happening. So, unfortunately, we don't live in a society at the moment because of the internet and because of the popularity gang, which is that popularity is more important than achievement. So, if you achieve something and you've got a talent, you're regarded in society as a threat to the others who want to be popular. So that can affect your mental health as well, the comparisons. So what I would do is try to give that person a support system around them, which would obviously be, counsellors. Refer them to the professional student counsellor. Continue to meet with me at least once a week until all those problems ceased, and then they were able to either take a term out and then re-engage into their academic work the following term. And then obviously you would meet them and try and make sure everything was solved. And, if the academic appeal was achieved, then you would bring them in and say, look, this has happened. This is now what you want to do. And usually those students started to thrive because their self-esteem was much better that the problem had been solved. I think obviously you can work through all these different other tips for self-esteem improvement. But at the end of the day, that self-esteem is going to be dependent on the problems that are solved, in my opinion. So I maybe am taking a different approach to suicide prevention, but it was a successful one. So I would always say to people, make a list of your problems, the things that need to be done to achieve an alleviation of those problems. And a lot of problems you cannot solve overnight. A crisis of homelessness or a marriage breakdown or, things going wrong at work or losing your job, for example, which would lead to homelessness as well. You have to work through that. You would need to go to get benefits whether you liked it or not. try and get another job. And obviously you've got the list of where to find another job, where to find another house. And these things have to be worked through. And hopefully you would work with people who are on your side. And pretty much if someone is not on your side during that crisis, I would advise dumping that person, because they're not helping you to get through your list, to get over this crisis. You see what I'm saying? And you will encounter people that revel in other people's disasters, because it elevates their status in that, they look better because they maybe have a job, they maybe have a home, etc., etc. So the revelers in someone else's disaster, and you kind of have to avoid. Obviously, if it's a question of addiction or to a drug or something like that, you want to be avoiding people who share that. So another smoker for me would continue the habit. And likewise, I used to have to counsel alcoholics, and that was the same. Alcoholics particularly find enablers who will help them to continue with the habit. The crowd that you would see at the pub. And of course, in lockdown, alcoholism has shot up to levels that you would say were just as much as a cause for concern as the COVID-19 is in the community. And homelessness due to people not being able to sustain a livelihood due to the COVID crisis is also another thing. And so these are things, you've got to work through that list. I would recommend making the list. The one thing that has helped me continue to stop smoking, believe it or not, is meditation, because I would wake up in the morning and find it very hard not to think of anything else other than a cigarette. And what you will find when you're trying to give up something like nicotine is you create a replacement with things like coffee. And chocolate was me. I mean, I'm still a chocoholic, but healthy chocolate, dark chocolate, which actually has been quite slimming, believe it or not, because 70% chocolate has a different physiognomy, is that the right word? On the body than sweet, cheap, milky chocolate, because it's got polyphenols in it. So it's similar to what you have in berries and cocoa. So in fact, in terms of mood changing and suicide prevention, I would recommend that people, instead of going down that negative route in their minds, where their mind plays games with them and goes through the list of all the things that they're bad at, they're a bad person, they're a failure, blah blah blah, which is the start of that thinking, is that chocolate has the ability to change a mood, because of it raises serotonin, so it makes people happier because of the chemicals in chocolate. But it's less harmful than taking other drugs. And it isn't, I wouldn't say chocolate was a drug in that sense. No, I wouldn't actually categorise it. It's a mood changer. So if chocolate's going to work and give you that buzz, then, and it diverts your mood from having a negative thought, right, then it's a good thing to do. So, you would go and take somebody for chocolate cake and coffee. Why do people do it? Why do women, and who are more supportive emotionally to each other, veer towards having chocolate cake and coffee when they're discussing a problem, a family problem? And they will automatically feel better because you're talking it through with somebody else. which is again what I would recommend. Problem solving is what you need to do. And if you're in lockdown and you can't figure something out, get on the phone to somebody. And if nobody is phoning you, make a list of people that you can get in touch with, and keep at it with them. And call back until you get the right person that you need to speak to. But yeah, chocolate and coffee are good things to go for. And if you've done that, even if you can't, if you're in lockdown, you can certainly have chocolate and coffee on your own, Zoom, connect with somebody, speak on the phone, and go through that list of problem solving. Obviously now, there are things people can do to access food. The food bank system is there. Churches are there. If somebody doesn't have food, pretty much, I'd say, but the Baptist church is probably the best at being able to provide food bank services and get somebody who's got hardly anything in the cupboard food right away. I know they run a token system, and I don't quite really fully understand that. And I wouldn't have thought during this crisis that was appropriate. It's kind of obvious if somebody's lost their job or they're homeless, they ain't going to be able to find enough money to eat properly. But anyway, yeah, the churches are very good. The city missions, the evangelical Christian churches are very good. And also the Gurdwaras, the Sikhs, have a tradition of when somebody goes to their temple and they turn up roughly around about the same time as meal times, lunchtime, they are welcome to sit and eat with everybody else, and they will be offered food. So I guess people who are homeless would know that system. The Simon community is the same thing. And obviously, as a student welfare officer, I would be accessing those things for that student who was in crisis. And it's not going to last forever. But they passed their exams. They would end up, coming to thank me when they were wearing the hat at the graduation. And there they were. They got through it. And I never really thought about it at the time. I didn't count the number of people who came to thank me because they'd got through the crisis, because it was a job, and you do that job, so you don't really necessarily think about it. But yeah, so I thought I would offer that wisdom, if you like, from somebody who did it for 3 or 4 years, and obviously somewhere or other made an impact. I got nominated for Scotswoman of the Year because of it. Do I implement it in my life? No. Well, probably I do. I try to work through my problems, and certainly when I was production manager in films, what I do now is I'm a producer of films, albeit low budget films. I never actually managed to raise money or help to do that or co-produce to the level of a big Hollywood budget film. And I wonder about that, and I think it's because probably I was brought up thinking that money was bad. So it's always been hard for me to think of how to raise that sort of money, and was it morally correct in the first place. So I've always had blocks, but I really would like to make a couple of films with a large budget and some Hollywood actors. So I've got a couple of projects that I'm working on and doing. I've just finished a script on the Scottish filmmaker, pioneer filmmaker Jenny Gilbertson, who you can look up. And her claim to fame was that she was a one-man band. She made over 27 documentaries. She did make one drama, and they were all I can't say the word, anthropological. No, that's not it. But you know what I mean. There were documentaries about crofters, Scottish crofters, Sheerness and Shetland, observational, and they were part of the documentary movement of the 1930s that was helmed by John Grierson. So, you know, they observed people and they were part of kind of like a social movement of documentary making. So she is a real character. So I'm hoping to try and raise money for that film and go cap in hand to various different people to do that. So we'll see how I get on. So I need to make my list, don't I? Yes, I do. And as a filmmaker, I also need to make my list to try and figure out the next step of this crisis that we are facing. Although obviously I managed to get the Odeon to say yes to some of our catalogue, because we're having 2 other films come out hopefully in March, albeit selected releases in Scotland. You know, I've still got to try and figure out the survival case for our company and how to go forward. Obviously, we've been affected because I had hoped that the date for the release of Dracula on holiday would have been the 12th of December. Well, it's not happened because there's no arenas to do it. So I guess I'll be looking at all the different grants that are available in order to help with all of that. For the next step, and I hope I manage to find something. So, you know, I would get up in the morning and I'll make my list. I do now, because I've managed to stop smoking, I do meditation. And I've looked into the whole meditation thing and discovered I wasn't very good at it and I needed to find tips of how to do that. So I'm a great one for looking at videos and watching how other people have coping mechanisms with their life and all the rest of it. And I found that, you know, once I'd woken up in the morning and I had my chocolate and coffee, and then it was porridge, and the worst case scenario is to put two slabs of chocolate in your porridge. But hey, that's very nice chocolate porridge. I would recommend as a stop smoking cure. Anyway, meditating. So I found that lighting a candle and doing sort of rituals around that, you know, obviously if you were smoking, lighting a candle is a good thing because it's you're not lighting a cigarette, you're lighting a candle. It's an affirmation. And then I would look at, you know, reading some writings of different philosophers and prophets. In my case, it would be the writings of the Baha'i Faith, Baha. But also, I get great comfort in other people's, you know, like Buddhist writings, mantras. I think do work, although I won't go into that one today, because it's a whole can of worms about why is the case that a mantra would work and calm you down and help also with that crisis. Well, I would say very briefly, I think it focuses the mind. So you're then able to write your list and work through it in a clearer, more focused way if you didn't say those mantras. You get me? But while I'm on that vein, I thought I would actually share a book I had been reading about how to do all these meditations. And this book, which is simply Ayurveda, I can almost pronounce it, by Bharti Vyas, is all about Ayurvedic medicine, which is really a sort of replacement system. You know, it's things like herbs, which are helpful. I've just described how chocolate works. Although Ayurveda probably doesn't recommend chocolate, but there's lots of herbs and different things from the Indian tradition of medicine, old medicine, is Ayurveda, and it does seem to work. I wouldn't pretend to know all about it. I've got some reading about it. But, the famous Ayurvedic one is milk and turmeric for all sorts of ailments, from your stomach to everything. So yeah, it includes normal herbs that we all know about in this book, this thing. But I thought I would read about their guidance on meditation. So if you don't mind, because I think it will help people at this time, where tonight there was 981 people have died of COVID-19 this year in the United Kingdom. And, the figures for that have gone up in the United Kingdom substantially. And in fact, worldwide, it is a bit worrying because overnight, I checked the figures last night, and it was 28 million cases tonight, but it was 27 million last night with the cases worldwide of COVID-19. So in the space of 24 hours, it's gone up by 1 million. And in terms of deaths overnight worldwide, 100,000 people have died overnight in the world. So, we do mentally now have to get to grips with doing lockdowns correctly. So I thought I would just read this little page about breathing and different things to do with meditation. Ayurveda recommends all sorts of breathing exercises, which maybe tomorrow, with the Happy New Year, I might actually read the part of it. But shall I read the part about breathing exercises as well? And I'll just, because obviously if somebody has COVID-19, breathing is going to be very important. And sometimes actually calming down that fight or flight syndrome is very important for survival. But at the same time, you don't want to panic unnecessarily, right? So this goes into the importance of slowing down your breathing and the reasons for it. So I'll just read this. I just wanted to come on and be helpful. I don't normally do the lives, so this is a new experience for me. Breathing exercises, the Ayurvedic approach. And I hope people are hearing me. I'll come forward because I realise that the microphone isn't so good, and probably when I hear it back, I may not even be able to hear this. So this is really just a test. So don't judge me on this first live on YouTube. I used to do my own show actually on radio, and it was a consumer show. So, hopefully I'll get back into the habit of it. Anyway, breathing exercises. When you've finished your yoga practice, you'll probably be slightly out of breath. What better than to move it into some meditative breathing exercises known in traditional Ayurveda as, I can't pronounce this, pranayama. So I'll give you that again, pranayama, both to refresh you and provide you with some concentrated focus for the day ahead. Ayurvedic breathing exercises improve creativity, help positive emotions to flow. As you breathe in during exercise, that's not me, it's the author, who is Barthelmess. I specify for each type. Imagine that you are feeding your soul with the vital life force, even if you do not believe this. Such a positive visualization or affirmation has psychological benefits if you decide you want it to. You can use these techniques at any point during the day when you feel stressed or tired or in need of a moment to yourself. Traditionally, these exercises are carried out while you're sitting cross-legged or on the floor but if you find this uncomfortable, sit on a cushion or even in a chair. You don't want any discomfort to distract you from the benefits of focused breathing. Yeah? And then it explains how to breathe. Unless we have exerted ourselves, we usually take only fairly shallow breaths that fill just the top part of the lungs. In fact, this isn't particularly good for us. When you take shallow breaths, you stimulate nerves that are programmed to deal with the response to a stressful situation. When you are nervous, you take very rapid, shallow breaths as part of the fight or flight response. And this triggers the release of stress hormones, such as adrenaline, allowing us to quickly pump up our muscles as if we are in danger so that we can escape. In contrast, the lower part of the lungs contain nerves that soothe and calm us. This explains why our mothers instinctively suggest take a deep breath before a stressful activity. There are great benefits to be had from breathing deeply more of the time. I'll say that again. There are great benefits to be had from breathing deeply more of the time. By filling the whole lung with air, you reduce anxiety, depression, nervousness, muscle tension, and fatigue. Practicing deep breathing also helps you get closer to an enviable place of mental clarity known as the alpha state. Yep. Sit or lie down in a comfortable position with one hand resting lightly on your upper chest and the other on your abdomen. Breathe in and out slowly for a few minutes and notice where the air goes. Does your abdomen fill with air first or your chest? Does your chest or abdomen move alone? Now breathe in slowly through your nose and direct your breath. You want to engorge your abdomen with air first by lowering your diaphragm. Imagine a balloon that you are filling with air beneath the upper parts of your lungs. In the last chapter, and I see I've gone a bit longer than normal. I've been on for half an hour. Once your abdomen is swollen with air, keep breathing in so that your chest also fills up and you feel it rise. Breathe out, emptying your chest first, followed by your abdomen. Breathing out shouldn't require any effort. Just let it flow. Then repeat this deep breathing exercise, attempting to slow down your breathing so you create a rhythmic tide of air entering and leaving your body. Incorporate this new way of breathing into your daily lifestyle and you will feel much more refreshed and focused. And at the very least, do use it when you progress to do breathing exercise detail below breathing. Okay, so that's it. Now, if you were to do your list of things that you need to attempt to try to solve that problem, plus also have your breathing exercises and a bit of meditation that is thought about what you need to do on that day, and then if you've got chocolate or coffee, or maybe you don't want to do that, and maybe it's herb tea for you. That's green tea is very good, and maybe it's nothing to do with having any kind of caffeine stimulation. But if you were depressed, yeah, reach out to a friend, speak to them over the phone, and try and solve the problems. Yeah, wallowing in the problems is the last thing you need to do. So that was it. That's my thing for today. And normally I would talk more about what was happening in the film industry. But I think people actually need built up and coached up a little bit about how to get through things at the moment. Because number one, fight or flight is okay, but we've seen what the fight mechanism happens with the fear of COVID-19. You don't really want to be fighting with people. You want to be working together in a community. So the fight or flight syndrome that is caused by panic, or either being ill or facing a situation of difficulty, needs to be reduced and reduced. And obviously the list of things that I've described can help with that. So if there's anybody out there who's really stuck, try some of what I've suggested and see. And if it works, make a comment down below and give me some feedback and subscribe to my channel. And over the next wee while, I'm maybe going to do some teaching updates for filmmakers. I've directed 2 films. I've written 3 films and I've co-produced about 20 low-budget films and production managed many of them. So I'm no stranger to the difficulties that filmmakers experience, and maybe next time my lighting may have improved and my background set. Although this is a lot better than normally I have on my Facebook, so that this will manage to achieve better lighting. I do also need to achieve better sound, so I may have to sit like this in the next one that I'll do. I'll come on tomorrow, hopefully, if I have a good day, and try and wish you a happy new year. But do try the list. Thanks for listening. Goodbye. So now I need to figure out how to switch this off. Bye for now, everybody.